Rabbi Emanuel Shachat, great man, passed away a few years ago. He was a very deep thinker, professor, a chassid of the Rebbe, illustrious writer and speaker. He was most famously known for his combating his debates with the Jews for J and Christians about the validity of the real Messiah, etc., etc. You could look him up on YouTube and other places, Chabad.org. He wrote quite a few books explaining the Kabbalistic charts and realms. Very deep man. Anyway, I had the honor of meeting him a few times, and once we were walking together in Melbourne, Australia, while I was there for yeshiva in 1988 and 88 and 89. When we were walking, there was a street sign. The street sign said, "No standing anytime." Common street sign, right? Rabbi Shachat said, "Chaim," says, "Look at the sign. What's it telling you?" "I don't know. No standing. You can't move your car. Can't put your car here." He said, "What's the hora'ah in Avodas Hashem? What's the lesson that we need to learn in our service to God from this street sign? Everything we see or hear, we need to learn a lesson from." And he said, a Jew and a person has to be a goer, a mover, a shaker. There's no standing anytime. There's no room for standing still in our service to God. No standing anytime. What does this have to do with our Torah portion? Good question. Maybe we'll get there. So, this week's Torah portion, Bechukosai. The Torah's words, says the Rebbe, are carefully chosen and perfectly matched to their intended content. The words are exact, as we know, and every word has a lesson and multiple lessons. The first three words in this week's Torah portion, Bechukosai, are Im Bechukosai Telechu. Today we'll go on a little journey analyzing those three words using the commentaries and the Rebbe's lesson, powerful lesson, relevant to us every single day. So, Im Bechukosai Telechu. It says, I'll just translate regular simple translation. God says, if you will go Im, if Bechukosai, in my statutes, in my laws, in my ways, Telechu, you will go. And Ve'es mitzvosai tishmoru, and my mitzvot you will observe. Then God says, V'asisamosam, and you will do them. V'nasati gishmechem bi'itam, I will give the rains in the right time. V'chol ha'aretz hitain yivula, ha'aretz hitain pirya. Basically, God is saying, simply speaking, follow my ways and it will benefit you. You're going to get everything you need. All the produce, everything you need will come your way if you follow my ways. The commentators talk about this a lot, and the Rebbe dissects and learns a lesson from each word. Im, Bechukosai, Telechu. And it's something like this. First of all, the commentators say right away that, and Rashi quotes it, says, if you will follow my ways, go in my ways, if you will go in my ways, is not necessarily talking about the mitzvahs, because right after that, the next words are ve'es mitzvosai tishmoru, and my mitzvot you will observe. So what's it talking about? It's actually talking about shetihiyu amelim batorah, that we should toil in the Torah. We should work hard and sweat in our study of Torah. That's what it's talking about. So now we know what's the statute that we're talking about, that God is commanding us to do and asking us to do, to study Torah and toil in it. Don't just do it, but do it well and do it hard and and sacrifice. Put some sacrifice into your study of Torah. Now, the words im, Bechukosai telecho, again, we'll dissect each one separately. Im literally means if. Im Bechukosai telecho, if you will go in my ways, then you will get the intended reward. That's a simple meaning. But the Midrash, the Talmud, and the commentators say that im over here doesn't only mean if. It also means if only, which is a request that God is asking the Jewish people, please, I beg of you, follow my ways and study my Torah. Bechukosai telecho, study my Torah. Not just if you will, but please do so. The Rebbe talks about this and says that when God requests something from us, he always gives us the power to succeed. So if God says, please study my Torah, toil in my Torah, then God gives us the power to succeed, because Eini mevakesh ela lefi kochan. God does not request something that we cannot do. So that's number one. That's the im, if only, first word, please, and here, along with the please, with the request, I'm giving you the power to perform. Moving on, the Talmud says something interesting. If you look at the word in the Torah, im, it's aleph, mem. Aleph, mem also translates or reads as aim. Aim means mother. Aim bechukosai telecho. The Talmud says that it's the mother in the home that directs the home and the children into what direction, into the Torah ways. It's actually the mother who has a better chance of succeeding in directing and guiding her children than the father does. Im, aim. Not just if you will go, but mother will take you. And another take on that is that a mother also, in the approach, the maternal approach to children and to education, is a softer one, and it's a more compassionate one naturally than the paternal one. And therefore, it's the mother who holds the rein in the house in guiding the home to be a Jewish home and to be an observant home, and in the levels of observance. So that's what the word im. Now we're going to move on to the next word, Bechukosai or Bechukotai, in my statutes, in my laws. Now we know that there are three categories of mitzvos. Is it mishpatim, which are laws, civil laws that are completely logical, they make sense, and without the Torah telling us, we'd figure them out on our own. Then there's another level, is eidos. Eidot are testimonials, but laws that they're testimony to something that happened, like the Shabbat and the holy days, all the holidays, the festivals, that we celebrate something that happened in the past that we wouldn't do them on our own, but once we're told about them, they're logical and make sense, and it resonates well with us. We can connect with them. And then there's the next level, it's called chukim. Chukim are the statutes, the decrees that have no basis in human logic. They don't make sense to us at all, even though some people might claim there's logic to them, but the Torah says there's no logic to them, they're just God's will. And that includes mitzvahs like keeping kosher, not mixing milk and meat, all the forbidden mixtures, also wool and linen. We're not supposed to mix the two garments, wool and linen, the two materials, and the laws of purity and impurity. We can come up with ideas and rhymes and reasons, but the bottom line is it's not based on logic. Now, why, asks the Rebbe, is God telling us about this mitzvah to toil in Torah? He's using the terminology of this illogical mitzvah instruction, form of instruction, which is called chuk, a chok, which is a decree, or a chukah. Why not use something more logical, like a mishpatim, b'mishpatim telecho, or be'edotai? many times in the Torah, they're interchangeable. But why specifically this one? The one that denotes a connection to God that is above and beyond logic. Says the Rebbe that the Alter Rebbe, first Chabad Rebbe in the Likutei Torah, in his, not the Tanya, but the big book that has thousands of Hasidic essays, he explains that the word Bechukosai shares the root of chakika. So chok, which means a law, a decree, shares the root with chakika, which means engraving. So he's saying that there's a very strong, powerful lesson over here about engraving. And he goes on and explains in the forms of writing that we have sharing information. We have various forms of writing, and today we have other virtual, digital forms of writing. But in those days we had paper or ink and parchment, and then we had engraving. So, ink and parchment and engraving. So we have, there's many ways to create unity, right? So if you take an ink and write something with it on parchment or paper, so you just bonded two things together, and they are now one. However, they're not essentially one. They're two things that came together that can still, with some difficulty, be separated. So they were not really one. Then there's the idea of engraving. When you take a stone and you hew out, you engrave letters in the stone, you engrave words or messages in the stone, like the tablets, like the Luchot Habrit were engraved. So what happens over there? You have over there you don't have two separate things. You don't have two separate ideas that are formed together, that are merged together. You have a bond that is an essential bond. It's one thing. The letter and the stone are one. The letter is the stone is the letter. There's no independence between the letter and the stone. The letter has no independent life. It is the stone. And says the Rebbe, this is also the message over here with Bechukosai. When we study Torah, when we learn Torah, we have to become engraved with the Torah. We have to be one with the Torah, not like two separate entities that come together that are separable. We have to be one with the Torah in the sense that I am the Torah is me, and there's nothing else. And the Rebbe says further that just like in a stone, you need to remove parts of the stone to form the letters. You need to bend and shape the stone. You etch out pieces to create the letters. So too in ourselves. Says the Rebbe, we also need to remove ourselves, our ego, our self-centeredness from the equation when we study Torah. There has to be only Torah. The only truth that exists, the only existence is the Torah, and we don't exist. And that's the only true way to become one with the Torah, to become one reality. And says the Rebbe that, so here we have the first two words, im, please, Bechukosai, engrave yourself in the Torah, and then finally telechu. The last word is telechu, you should go. No standing anytime. Keep on trucking. Don't stay in one place. In order to be a living thing must grow, says the Rebbe always. Many times a living thing must grow. That is the characteristic of us, of a living being, a living organism, is that it's growing. So too, says Rebbe, we need to grow. We should not suffice with what we've done in the past, what we've studied in the past, but we have to grow. And in order to grow, you need to work hard, you need to toil, you need to sacrifice. just like a field will not yield its crops and produce unless we plant and sow and harvest and reap. So too we have to work hard in our Torah study, and we will grow. Bechukosai. Please engrave the Torah in your souls and work hard on it, and you shall succeed. That's the story, and that's a good introduction and a preparation for the upcoming holiday of Shavuos. Shavuos is going to be next week, God willing. We'll have one more running commentary before that, and that'll be number 200. I'm excited. Don't know what it's going to be yet, but I'm thinking about it. God bless you. Take care. Shabbat Shalom. And share.